Welcome to Work Comp Talk, a podcast dedicated to all the injured workers here in California. I want to thank our lovely sponsors, Pacific Workers, the lawyers for injured workers. If you have not yet been able to connect with an attorney who can feel like they're listening to you, who is going to be there every step of the way, I highly encourage you to check them out at pacificworkers.com, especially if you're starting to get into some issues within your workers' compensation claim. My name is Carmen, your host, and this is the Best of Work Comp Talk series where we highlight the best episodes from the podcast into one. It's very important for you to hit the description. That way you get actual links to the full episodes of those topics we will be highlighting in this episode. And I also wanted to give you a heads up. Season 5 is coming up. It's coming up pretty soon, and I'm excited because I'm going to be able to share so much more knowledge with you as I embark this new season, along with many other co-hosts that are also attorneys for workers' compensation. So we're going to get different views and different concepts, different ideas that are going to come from these other attorneys. And you'll also get to meet other great people that belong to Pacific Workers. So I hope you join us for this. And I also hope you like this best of Work Comp Talk. I'll catch you guys next time.
Without further ado, let's talk about hiring an attorney, hiring a workers' compensation attorney, and not hiring a workers' compensation attorney.
But generally, fees and workers' comp are limited to 15%, not 33%, 40%, or 50%. And so if you're looking at a case and saying, on average, the attorney will get you 30% more, even after the attorney fee, are still netting substantially more money. And those are just averages as well. You know, every case is different. There's some cases where we've gotten 400 or 500% more than the injured worker was offered initially. You know, it's just case by case.
So that 15%, is that just certain attorneys or every?
I would say, being in this industry for over a decade and working on both sides and seeing other attorneys practice and such, it's very much standard that I would say almost all attorneys ask for 15%.
Is that just in the state of California or nationwide?
You know, I don't know the answer to that question. You know, I'm a California licensed attorney and this is all I practiced. And so I don't know what other states have in terms of attorney's fees. You get a lot of misclassification cases where an employer will deny someone work comp coverage because they'll say, oh, you were an independent contractor, not an employee.
That 15% is really making sure that you're putting out all your cards on the table and that you know you have someone to guide you through your workers' comp case, which is, I think, is a lot of the misconception that people might have when they think, oh, I'm going to hire a lawyer. This lawyer just wants part of my money. But it's the things you do for that 15%.
I know damn well I've spent countless hours working on it. And at the end of the day, my attorney fee might be like $2,000. And I've put 50, 60, 70 hours into the case for trial to just get the case accepted, cross-examining experts, trying the case on permanent disability and other things. And yeah, I don't make much money and I might be working at very, very low rates when you factor it out on an hourly basis. But that's not every case. They're not all the same.
You know, my attorney's just trying to take most of my money, most of my settlement, but that's not the case.
As a business owner, I have employees. They have rent. They have children. We, as a company, do have financial incentive, not only to benefit the injured worker, but to keep our lights on. You know, we want to do a good job because we want to be able to feed our own families.
It just doesn't. But unfortunately, you know, there's a lot of stuff out in the internet. And just because maybe one person went through a scenario where it didn't necessarily mean that attorney was for workers' comp. It could have been a personal injury. It could have been a criminal case. It could have been someone advocating for you in a different law field.
If I was in a business, like, let's say I was in criminal law and I did DUIs and I charged flat rate. I say, hey, I'll do your DUI case for $3,500. Apparently, I want to you know, try and deliver the result to the client, but not do as much work for that amount of money. Right. So there's that incentive there. But like you said, if the more we get for you, the more we make, we're a team.
There's a story where there was a defense attorney, or not a defense attorney, an applicant's attorney, which is essentially someone who's batting for the injured worker, who's supporting the injured worker and going against the insurance companies. Talk about the story that the number one attorney in California decided to give up on a case or on a client. You pick up the client, and because that previous attorney felt there was no winning or there was no case involved, like there was nothing from that case, or the case was not gonna, you pick up the case and you end up settling that case for way more, and you end up settling in general when the number one attorney couldn't settle it.
They want an easy case where they don't have to go to court much, they don't have to fight, they don't have to write, like it's just kind of processing more than it is litigation. A gentleman had been shot a couple of times by a coworker. Pretty substantial injuries.
Of course.
He got shot. He was in a coma for a few months. While he's in a coma, his wife gave birth to their daughter.
Yeah.
She thought he wasn't going to wake up, wasn't ever going to get to see her and all that stuff. He's catastrophically disabled because of his injuries. There was a legal issue in the case about whether or not he would have been barred to collect any benefits at all. And because the defense said, no, you had actually started an altercation, and it's because you started the altercation, you got shot. And there's a legal defense in workers' comp. It's if you start a fight, you're the first aggressor, you are barred from collecting benefits regardless of who won the fight.
Right.
So you start a fight, you get your butt kicked, too bad, he's got a case. And it's an all or nothing case because of the scope of his injuries. Knowledge.
Because of the system being so complex.
They're not for your health or welfare. They really don't care at the end of the day.
But there is the facts, studies that have been done when it comes to hiring an attorney for a workers' comp case.
The system's not going to pay you for the fact that you've been displaced from your employment for the rest of your life. The remedy for that on the lawyer's side would be to try to change the treating physician, ask the treating physician to change work restrictions, or if we disagree with the doctor, going to a QME, all of which can take weeks, if not months. So I think there's a lot of roadblocks in the way in workers' comp, and even more so if you're kind of going down the path on your own and you really don't know what you're doing. That being said, think twice when you're hiring an attorney. Make sure you're hiring the right attorney. When you're paying that 15% out of your settlement, you're getting an intake specialist who's going to figure out exactly what needs to be filed and file everything with the court. You're going to have a medical treatment specialist who's ensuring that we select the best doctor for you and getting your appointment set up. You're going to have a team of case managers.
We hope you've enjoyed and learned what really comes in with those 15%, 15% contingency fee from your workers' comp attorney, the importance of hiring an attorney, and if you need an attorney, please by all means call Pacific Workers, the Lawyers for Injured Workers.
Today's a bit different, and it's something we haven't ever done, and it was really exciting to do this because we get to intersect the world of medicine along with law.
So CSIMS is an organization for doctors, by doctors, really to bridge the gap between law and medicine. The workers' comp system is somewhat unique in that there's a huge crossover between the two, and there's a lot of involvement between the legal world, judges and lawyers, as well as medical providers and evaluators in the work comp stuff. And so I think to some extent, you kind of have to know a little bit of everything. We as lawyers, in order to be advocates for our clients, have to address issues with doctors, which means to some extent we have to be familiar with the medicine component to it. And the doctors, the same way, have to address legal issues and medical legal issues in the case. And so they have to be familiar with what the laws are in workers' comp. So organizations like CSIMS play a huge part in helping educate and get doctors on board with legal components that they may not necessarily be familiar with, or just not really to a level of detail they would have otherwise. And so it's a great organization. I think the issue in workers' comp is that there's a lot of red tape legally that puts the doctor at odds with what their oath as a physician is. The doctors take the Hippocratic Oath, and that's their oath to basically help people and be true to their role as a physician at all times. Mm-hmm. Well, workers' comp is this system, and it's got legal rules in place, and it's a lot of red tape for the physicians because they can't just go and give anyone and everyone the treatment that they feel that person actually needs. They have to submit things like request for authorization. They have to fill out the right forms. They have to submit the right forms at the right times.
Speaking about the red tapes, what are some of the problems with workers' comp for the injured workers?
From the legal side of things, it takes time. The system's set up in a way that it's not advantageous to get things done quickly. When you request a hearing, for example, it takes 30 plus days. Once you get a hearing on calendar, you may not even get a decision that day if there's an issue. Getting to a QME in the first place can take months. Getting to a treating physician can take several weeks, if not longer. And then even when you're there, maybe the doctor can't even do what they want to do because they have to request authorization, and that's denied.
Hey, this is Bilal Kassim, managing attorney at Pacific Workers, and today we're here in sunny San Diego. It's CSIM's 37th annual conference, and I'm joined today by the one and only Dr. Navani. Tell us a little bit about CSIMs.
Oh, CSIMS, what can I say? It's an amazing organization. It is the only organization that represents physicians practicing industrial medicine. We have this year actually gotten a little bit into personal injury as well. Physicians who treat injured workers and personal injury patients don't really have any representation in terms of how to offer care, the quality of reports to write, or even advocacy on their behalf. So CSIMS fills that void, both from the treatment and medical legal perspective.
And would you say that as a doctor in workers' comp that you're able to really be a patient advocate as you need to be?
I think everything we do every single day and every single moment in a clinic is for the patients. We want them to get better. We want them to have a good quality of life. We want them to get back to work and be productive members of the society, get back to being who they were before the injury.
And being a physician on the front line in the system, where do you see some of the shortcomings or shortfalls for the injured worker these days?
I think access is a big one where, injured workers are not able to find doctors of different specialties in the panels where they can go and treat. So MPN gets to be a real issue. And I think we need to take steps to get that. And, CSIMS through advocacy efforts is focusing on that being one of the measures. You and I both are in Northern California. The cost of living have gone up. Inflation is definitely here. And it's really become hard for physicians, especially in private practice, to be able to sustain practices with the insurance rates not having gone up for reimbursements, the infrastructure costs having gone up, and just being difficult for the physicians to sustain and survive in the practice. So I think those two are key features that are facing the physicians now. But other than that, so many other things, medical legal access, and even like specialists who are available to be able to treat these patients, they're shrinking in numbers. Even the QME doctors are shrinking in numbers in terms of workers' comp. So lots of challenges. I think the injured workers are already at a disadvantage because their lives are not the same after the injury, and they have so much to deal with because workers' comp is one of the most complex systems we know of. There is one patient surrounded by so many different stakeholders that they have to work through. They have adjusters, and they have case managers, and they have attorneys, and they have doctors, and they have multiple other people influencing their case. And sometimes they are directionless. And in face of that, not having a provider to be able to go to and be able to talk to about their problems and get proper care it's a big issue, I feel.
We also got to catch up with Dr. Lawrence Weil, who is a fantastic pain management physician who works out of the Walnut Creek office of Boomerang Health. And Dr. Weil is both a treating physician and a qualified medical evaluator, which means he not only sees patients for just evaluation, but he's there on the front lines actually trying to give them the care they need. And unfortunately, I think that requires a lot of balance, and both serving as a QME and a treating physician. And so he had a lot of good insight about what it's like to serve in each of those roles.
Well, a lot of people don't understand. The difference is when the physician is treating the patient, saying what's medically in the patient's best interests, trying to fix what ails them. A qualified medical examiner or an agreed medical examiner is completely different, and we're basically taking a snapshot and saying where the patient would be in terms of what impairments, it's a legal concept, they have and what the medical legal status is of that patient. We're not allowed to treat the patient. I mean, we can make recommendations, but we cannot give that patient any treatment whatsoever. It's a different role.
And with this, we'll leave you guys off and we'll catch you guys on the next episode.
My name is Carmen, your host for this podcast, and joining me as always is Bilal Kassim, president and co-founder, managing attorney of Pacific Workers, the lawyers for injured workers, who also happen to be our sponsors for the podcast. 51 episodes that we've recorded already.
Helping a lot of people out there navigate their way through workers' comp, among other issues. I've ran into random clients of the firm that are represented by other attorneys, not myself. And, they recognize me and stuff. And they say, oh, we listen to your podcast. We get a lot of information from it.
It's exciting for us to continue to build onto this podcast. I thought, who's going to want to listen to us just jabber about work comp talk or just exactly workers comp related issues? But to my surprise, I'm really shocked to see how many people are actually enjoying the content. More than anything, requesting certain content to be recorded because they find value in it.
There's a lot of information related to workers' comp out there that people just can't go get on their own or navigate on their own because it's either not available or too complex. The way I think about workers' comp might be a little bit different than someone like your mom who's never gone through it before and is now figuring it out for the first time. Those are learning experiences for other people going through the same thing as well.
Are you really?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a gift to be able to help people not only in the courtroom but outside of the courtroom too, just doing stuff like this informally as well. Not everyone may trust a lawyer, some people want to navigate it on their own and that's cool, but at least if they're not our client, I feel the least thing I can do is put the information out there to try and help those people who are trying to do it on their own.
You see it a lot, right? There's those that choose to not go through the avenue of hiring an attorney, and they can survive, but as an attorney, you also know how much they lose just because they're not represented by someone who understands the system. I've seen clients come through here and, like you've mentioned before, they've received 4 times more than what their initial offer was on a settlement. Had they not had an attorney, they would have probably settled for that offer and would have been struggling. I used to be the person that used to have a sticker one and I'd take all the stickers off.
Just take the stickers and change the colors.
If you have not yet learned about Pacific Workers, this would be a time for you to go visit the website, pacificworkers.com, which, by the way, we're about to relaunch for 2023.
My career actually started representing employers and insurance companies, and the pay structure at big firms like that is that it's billable hours, meaning you're counting the time of day that you're working on projects for your client and you're billing them for that time. My optimal result was for them to get less than what they deserve, to mitigate costs on behalf of the client and, quite frankly, bill the crap out of them doing it, right? And so my gears quickly shifted, and that's when I came over to start this business. The people, the delivery drivers, the warehouse workers, the firefighters, the medical professionals, the teachers, the people who really make up our communities and make our world function, I saw a direct way that I could do that and impact lives on a daily basis.
For the past 2 years, COVID has really came in and literally changed everyone's world.
Really, the focus was doing things to mitigate the spread of COVID, like our initiative to deliver 5,000 masks and support our communities in that route. I think just some of the structure in workers' comp I'm really thankful for. In personal injury law, for example, if you get hurt, no one pays your lost wages. You don't get medical care unless you know a doctor who can do it on a lien basis, or you have medical insurance to take care of it, and even then you have your co-pays. Workers' comp is a system that's designed to provide you with your lost wages while you're recovering from work. It's designed to pay for the medical care, so you don't have to worry about insurance or bills or things like that. Just by design, there's a lot of good intentions that went into the system as is, even though there's bad actors involved making the system geared towards the benefit of the injured worker without having to fight for every inch, is a good start. The labor code itself is designed and should be interpreted for the benefit of the injured worker, which means just by default, everything that you read out there in the law should be interpreted slanted towards the injured worker's benefit.
If things were not to work out the way you've expected them to after your injury, say you're not going to go back to that job you've always done, they give you the opportunity to retrain, and they pay you.
The vocational retraining benefits are pretty cool. The idea that if you're displaced from your employment, you get additional benefits to help re-educate or retrain yourself. Of course, again, it's one of those things that falls a little short, but it comes from a good place.
The attorney's not charging you up front just to take your case or just to even help you navigate through the system. That's a huge benefit. That an attorney is not saying, okay, well, you need to pay me $2,000 up front and then I'll start your case.
You can't really afford a private defense attorney. So, that's not necessarily access to justice like you do hiring a work comp attorney, where they say, I guess for the most part, don't pay me anything up front.
And if you don't win.
Yeah, and if you don't win, there's no bills. But it was something we just did out of, the kindness of our hearts as people and the type of law firm we are to help out our client. But
that's awesome.
It's not a cost the client had to eat up front.
We would learn from some of the attorneys and their teams that their client was currently going through situations that, either they were left with zero money for food or for the holidays. And I remember everyone would scramble, like, hey, let's figure out how we can help this client out. If anybody needs the help, it's the injured worker. One, they can't work, they can't go back to work. And if they're working, they're not making as much as they used to. Gas prices went up the roof. We were able to fill up people's gas tanks for the month. I'm excited for 2023. Again, if there is anything you want us to talk about, drop it in the comments.
I encourage everyone to engage in gratitude practice and take time to think about the good stuff and be thankful for what you do have.
Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you're notified when we do drop the next episode.